All right. Well, welcome to the Mostly Star Wars podcast. Today we have your regular trio of hosts. First, we got Mostly Darth, Tyler. Then
Howdy.
we got our one and only Crazy Q, Quentin.
Hello.
Finally, myself, Mostly Martinez, Josiah. So today it's our episode 3, but we're going to be talking about episode 2. So today we were going to have a special guest because it was their favorite of the prequel trilogies. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency, so our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. However, jumping kind of right into this, uh, we all love and hate Attack of the Clones for different reasons. And so I think the best thing, instead of jumping into the negative right away, is let's talk about maybe some of our favorite moments. So what's your favorite moment, Tyler?
So I'd have to say, probably when Dooku is talking with Obi-Wan, and he basically spells out everything that's happening. He flat out tells Obi-Wan the entire plot. He tells him, Palpatine's controlling everything, but
Yeah.
obviously Obi-Wan isn't going to believe him. But I also like he plays on the. Oh, I was once Qui-Gon's master, just as you was once his, and so he plays on that so well, and it kind of gives you chills of like, and it actually I was rewatching it, and it made me think: is Dooku really bad, or is he more like Qui-Gon is for the Sith? It's interesting. I just never thought about it like that before, but so that's kind of because it seems to have a more. And it kind of has a more, I don't know, the word's escaping me, but yeah, it's a great moment. And yeah, sorry I didn't switch the cameras quick enough. I got to learn that for myself. But yeah, that's my favorite moment.
All right, and then Q.
That's a tough one. I do really like um the fight between Obi-Wan and Django. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a real interesting situation, and I think it shows the ability that Beskar and Mandalorian equipped individuals can fight well against Jedi. There's a history there, and they have that ability. And later on, when they're fighting in space, and you get that first seismic charge, oh, that is
Ooh,
one of the greatest sound effects in the history of cinema. It is just
yeah,
absolutely beautiful, and I will never forget that.
I love
yeah.
when it starts popping up. We've been seeing it more in the last, what, in Boba Fett and in the last season of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
I love that ship, the Fett's ship, and it's so good to see it again in the Mandalorian. And I really loved how the Mandalorian they showed how it actually works, like from inside the ship. That was,
Yes.
I was getting goosebumps when I saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your favorite moment, Josiah?
Yeah, I think there's definitely the moment with the fight scene of Yoda and Dooku. Just the emotions behind it, the meaning behind it, the different implications behind it, the the master Padawan, um, and I think another interesting point to the whole thing is even just the battle itself. You kind of see it kind of makes it seem in a way that they're kind of evenly matched, but in reality, uh, I feel like the difference is where Dooku was making things fall down and Yoda was was stopping them. So the differences of force it's easier to make something fall down than to keep it, from falling. So I kind of liked I guess like the small little details there between the two. And so I do like that moment, but I feel like, once again, I always cheat, but I think the biggest moment for me was when all the Jedi come in to Geonosis, like into the Colosseum, and you just see,
Mhm.
100 Jedi, just, lightsabers everywhere. They're, taking off their hoods all over the place in the crowd. I think that moment was just so huge because, yeah, usually, and in the making of, a couple of the different characters brought this out, but before, you only see, a couple of Jedi and a Sith, or just a couple of Jedi. You don't get to see, the Jedi at that time were in high power. So you finally get to see all of them, fighting in unison, but like with their own styles, based on, obviously they're different species and different trainers and masters, things like that. But I thought that, I remember that in the theater, that I just, got goosebumps, and just, like, what the heck, just one of those moments where it kind of changes you forever. And Star Wars does that so many times to me, where, a piece of cinema changes your viewpoint and thoughts, forever. And I think that was one of the moments for me when I was just like, wow, this is the type of Star Wars that I want to see. So
I think that moment too is one of it's almost like that's what people wanted when they thought, okay, we're getting new Star Wars and we're gonna get the Jedi. That that's what they wanted to see. That was the moment that everyone been waiting for, of hundreds of Jedi and fighting a huge battle and what that would look like.
yeah.
And that's what that was. When they thought, okay.
Yeah,
And
I
so
still get goosebumps every time I see when all the lightsabers light up and it's just they zoom out, you see the whole arena just full of lightsabers. It's so cool.
And Mace's is purple.
yeah, right.
Yep, so he can stand out.
Yeah. I love that. I love that story behind it, that, we all, love Samuel Jackson, and, as
It can be
Mace
purple.
especially. And I just love that's how it happened, that, that basically Samuel Jackson's like, I want to have purple, and George is like, okay. That's just awesome.
I
Have you?
think
I
there was
mean,
a
that conversation was filmed. Have you seen it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, what colors are there? Well, usually blue and green are for the good guys, and red are for the bad guys. Well, what if I want purple? We can do purple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that
Love it.
is pretty great.
So, what about, how do we feel about who the main character is in this episode?
So I personally think that there's two, and it's just Anakin and Obi-Wan, because the whole movie is following them around. And so they start off together, and then they split up and they each go do their own things, but then they're back together, and it continually follows what they are doing. It's both of them, and that it's a great symbolization for the fact that I think what George was trying to show is their brotherhood, their brothers, and so they follow them both. In this movie, they're more master and apprentice, or father and son, but it's almost kind of weird how their relationship moves from that to a more brotherhood kind of relationship. And it kind of got me thinking, like, uh, Obi-Wan always calls him uh, my young Padawan. He's constantly saying young Padawan, my young apprentice, making sure that Anakin knows he's young. But I was kind of thinking about it, and I was wondering if it wasn't more just also for Obi-Wan himself as well, because he is trying to tell himself, no, you need to be good, and you still have a responsibility to train this person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think, Q?
Well, I have a little different of opinion. My thought is who who is the first main character we see in the movie? It's Padme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the the Skywalker saga, right? It's the tragedy of Darth Vader, but it's also the Skywalker saga. And we know that Padme becomes a Skywalker. I think it's a huge part of this movie is that story between those two, right? Like a lot of stuff
Yeah.
has to happen, but their love story is one of the most important things to this prequel series, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Padme and Anakin together are the main characters, and you've got the supporting cast around them to fill in this deeper story. But I think a large portion of this is of their uh, the main characters would be Anakin and Padme.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Josiah?
Yeah, I have to agree, and I was really like struggling trying to choose one of the two, and so I feel like I'm kind of like you. I definitely feel like it's Anakin and Padme, but because the importance of both of them is so uniquely tied together, and the fact that this is like a legit love story. You know, this movie is a love story, is quirky and is like weird, cringy, like, you know, sexual harassment borderline moments in the in you know
Yeah.
I think, you know, in all it's a love story of two people, you know, Anakin, who, you know, from a young age was, you know, training to be a Jedi, and then Padme, who, you know, was, you know, a queen and then a senator. So neither one of them really had, you know, a normal upbringing, you know, where, and so I think, you know, a lot of like the hate they get, I think the dialogue and the way that they acted towards each other was exactly what you would expect in both of them. But yeah, I feel like they are really the main characters because there's some crazy moments happening. I mean, obviously Obi-Wan and his investigation, which is funny because he was so against the investigation and then leads it. But
Right.
yeah, Obi-Wan definitely plays a big role. I mean, the council's there. Once again, Palpatine's there pulling strings, and obviously, until later, do you know to what extent? But I do definitely feel like both Anakin and Padme are the main characters because this is where we find out how they fall in love and how, you know, two more of the greatest heroes of all time, Luke and Leia, come to be. So yeah, I have to go with Padme and Anakin as well.
Not a wrong choice here.
You know, I wanted to touch on some of those thoughts you said about the cringiness and inappropriateness.
Mm-hmm.
I used to just think, that's bad writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually, if you really think about it, it's really good writing because Anakin, since he was 9, has been a Jedi, right?
Yeah.
So I don't exactly think they teach a class in flirting. Spent most of his time with Obi-Wan,
Or
on
sexual
missions
harassment
across the
training.
galaxy. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think
So
as a proper Jedi shouldn't need that.
I mean, he's a 19-year-old kid full of hormones with no experience talking to girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be some cringe there. I'm sure you were cringy when you were 19. Sure, we all were. So I trying to think about that. I was when I was watching it, I was thinking that maybe it's not as bad as we all used to think it was.
Mm-hmm.
That it was actually intended like that.
I will agree with that. I've also I've watched a video recently. His channel is So Uncivilized, and he's got some good points on the wooden dialogue because George Lucas calls himself the king of wooden dialogue, and basically he says that he uses dialogue in such a way that it's like a sound effect. But he also brought out that a sound effect, you could think, well, that's just minor, that's not a big thing. But if you think about Star Wars, it has the most memorable sound effects ever.
Yeah.
A lightsaber, and just using sound to project moments. I think of in A New Hope when Vader is coming in, you just hear the ship screeching, and it sounds terrifying, like in the moments building. And there's so much of that, and so, but a sound effect is meant to be distinct. You should understand what it means, and that's the point of his writing. That's the point of the dialogue. It's very clear that it is kind of corny. It's
Mhm.
it. He also like Quentin said, he doesn't understand how to flirt and all that, but also the message is supposed to be clear. You're supposed to clearly understand the message that George is trying to write, and I think we got that. And another thing with some of the writing, makes for great memes.
Totally true. And I agree with both of you guys. I think that is it's an excellent point, when it comes to all that, because the other side to it, when you think of George's focus is not so much on the dialogue, but on the special effects and the sounds and the music, the beautiful music. If that's a lot of his focus, so to say. And um, I'm spacing what the actor's name was, but the actor that played Senator Valorum.
Oh yeah, I know
Anyway,
who you're talking about.
so there was talk that, and he did an interview where he said that one of the reasons he didn't come back, because he was scripted to come back, was because George cared more about special effects and sounds than the actual actors. And I think, that's one of the beauties of Star Wars, like it doesn't need the dialogue to be amazing, amazing, amazing stories. And, but, that aside, I feel like in this movie, the dialogue gets so much hate, like, and that it's so cringy and weird. And I just feel like even when I watched it, so when I watched it when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I was young too. So I didn't think the dialogue was weird. And then as I kind of grew up, I kind of thought it was weird based on everyone else thinking it was weird. But I
Yep.
think, the more I matured and like you were saying, like thinking of wooden dialogue and then seeing, the way that different plays and things like that George was really into, the way that they conversed, you can kind of see how, this wasn't just like, oh, I don't care about the dialogue, you know, it just is what it is going to be. If it's weird, it's weird. All of this was intentional. And the more that you think of it and view it as intentional, the more you start to enjoy the dialogue. Like the last time that I watched it, I enjoyed it so much better, instead of thinking, oh, that's weird or cringy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like, wow, that was actually amazing writing. And then, Hayden Christensen getting like hate for his acting. Like, I'm like, man, he did so good based on the character he was portrayed to be, and then based on the dialogue he was said to have. Like he was excellent. And I
Yeah,
think
he really was.
I think another thing with it is, this is Luke's dad, right? And we know how Luke was too. Luke Luke at the beginning, when you first see him, is like a whiny little brat.
Yep.
you know he's just like, complaining about everything, and just, yeah, I don't know, he's just, at the time you don't really think of it, but when you kind of look back, you're like, wow, he was kind of like really immature and whiny. And then we all know what he ends up being, a legend. And I feel like Anakin is similar in the fact that, he does kind of, start off like maybe like I don't think he's so much whiny, but definitely I would say, there's the mix of self-righteousness, arrogance, and then complaining when things don't go his way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you can definitely see the two, and there is similarities, but obviously Luke and Anakin made different choices in the long run. But yeah, I think as far as the dialogue goes, I really love it because, and we talked about this off air even a few days ago, but I remember when I was attempting to date my wife, and I was nervous, I was shaky, I was saying nonsense. Looking back at some of the interactions that we had when I was trying to date her, like, yeah, I can't fault Anakin too much for the things that he did. I wasn't like, staring at her like he did and like trying to cop a feel, but I was definitely saying nonsense and, trying to say things to make myself sound cool that in the long run, I was like, why did I say that? That was so dumb. So now that was me. And so you could only imagine now Anakin, where, well, like we already said, he was raised in a Jedi temple since he was 9. So, got to give him a little bit of slack. He was doing the best he can. And we already know that Anakin knows what he wants and he goes for it. Whether it's right or wrong, he does know what he wants and goes for it. And I think that's one reason why Padme ends up falling in love with him, because, she's surrounded by, first as a queen that are going to do whatever she says, whether they believe or not. And then finally, she's in the Senate where everyone jokes about it, but no one's to be trusted, really. Everybody's out for themselves, and there's some sort of political or financial gain, so she can't really trust anybody and anybody's words to be true. And now she has Anakin, who's telling you, this is what I feel, and proving to her that that's what he feels. So I think that's kind of another thing where she like finally finds truth in someone, who's like, I love you and I'm going to prove it to you this way. So
and she kind of
agree.
Well, she kind of also goes and realizes, well, he might be the first one that's ever talking straight to her, telling her what she wants to hear. I mean, at one point she goes, "Are you making fun of me?" Like, so he's totally just being honest, really. He's nervous to even be talking to her. And I like that point too, of like the nervousness, because later you see in the Clone Wars where he's flirting with the slave operator on what I can't remember her name, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about, when they're infiltrating the slave trading, and he's flirting with the queen cat lady.
Yeah.
and it's so much smooth talking, but obviously at that point he has no interest, and he's not nervous in any way. So and at that point he's older and also, married, so it just makes more sense that he would be better at it then. One thing I wanted to talk about is, I was kind of thinking about this when I rewatched it, is I feel like the tragedy of Shmi Skywalker, because when he finds her, she tells him basically now she is complete. And what I took from that is that she got to see her son grow up, see him as an adult, as a Jedi, saving people, doing what he's supposed to, and that that fulfilled her, and that was all that she wanted left from life at that point. And just the sadness that her death alone was one of the many factors that led to the exact opposite of that, of the opposite of everything that she ever wanted. And so that moment when I was rewatching it is like, that's tough. It's sad for her because you think this is what she wanted, was to see him as a Jedi, and well, he kills all the Jedi and kills a lot of people. It's the opposite of what she ever wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I think another kind of point when it comes to like the whole situation, I guess you can say, is even within the movie, Anakin is having those nightmares, which are basically, premonitions at that point. And if you kind of see the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, it really fluctuates. It fluctuates between Master Padawan to brothers to father son to friends. It really kind of is all over the place. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why we see Anakin talk back and be disrespectful as much as he does, because I feel like there is never necessarily ground rules until Obi-Wan decides that there is. In
Yeah, I
one
like.
moment they're laughing and having a good time and everything's all good, and then the next it's like, don't ever, speak over your master.
I
So
like.
yeah.
I like that point because when I think about it, Obi-Wan is tough on Anakin, especially in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, he is probably more lenient with Anakin than any other Jedi would be, period. Because there's the one point when they're chasing after Dooku and he's like, put the ship down and I can't leave her. And he just says, you'll be expelled from the Jedi Order. Well, he doesn't tell anyone else about that conversation. I'm certain from everything I've seen, there's no way that he's ever told anyone else about that conversation that they had, and that little moment that Anakin had to have to kind of get himself focused.
Mm-hmm.
And because obviously he sees what's going on too. He sees his infatuation with Padme, and
Yes.
so he's like tough on him, but also lets him get away with that. And I don't think Anakin really realizes that, especially in this movie. I think he realizes that throughout the Clone Wars, and you kind of get to see that where they don't always agree, but even Obi-Wan just brushes that off as Anakin being Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to Revenge of the Sith, they have a more brother relationship where he's like, all right, no, you can have your day with the politicians. You saved me for the 9th time.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that, and I think that is actually
Hold on.
how okay,
How's that line go again?
that business on Keita Namoria doesn't count. Yes, that I'm pretty sure I have. We're reading into the Brotherhood book.
Oh, this is such
Reading the
yes.
Brotherhood book. I'm a
No
little bit into
spoilers,
it.
but
No spoilers. I'm just gonna say that I'm pretty sure
oh man,
it'll get to.
bringing up
It's
that
getting to
line,
that
I'm
moment.
I'm so excited for this now.
It's
It's been a
getting to
good book
that
already,
moment.
but now
But I think that's kind of how their relationship transfers from a more fatherhood, because I think Obi-Wan's actually really good at that, is transferring, and you don't see him throughout the Clone Wars berating him for being a Padawan. It's almost like everyone else considers him young, but once he's a knight, Obi-Wan's like, okay, you're a Jedi Knight. Obviously, I'm not need to berate you about putting you down or making sure you know your place.
I'm pretty sure in that book at the very beginning he calls them equals,
Yeah, exactly.
which is interesting.
Which is
So I
more of
think
the
that
transfers.
going back to kind of my original point with that, and kind of where I was going around to is, so basically Anakin has Obi-Wan, and then Obi-Wan at this moment, at least, like we've kind of already discussed, it seems like it's always kind of putting him down. And then even in the movie, we have the moment with Yoda and Windu, which, you know, are basically the most important members of the council. you know, so he's basically talking to the people with probably the most sway in the council when it comes to making decisions. And Windu is talking good about Anakin, and then Obi-Wan contradicts. So Obi-Wan basically, to the people who would decide if Anakin's ready or not, are saying, well, like, oh, I think he's ready. He's doing really good. He has, he's obviously very skilled and all these things. And he's like, oh, I don't think he's ready. And, he's arrogant and all this type of stuff. So basically he's talking trash about Anakin to like the two most important people in the council. And basically in the end, Yoda ends up giving them all counsel, about
Yes.
being arrogant. But so I think you kind of have that. And I feel like in that moment, because it bounces around so much, that Obi-Wan basically saying, your dreams will pass, was really kind of like a slap in the face when Anakin's opening up about, which, like you guys had mentioned before, maybe another master wouldn't even like, hold a discussion like that, or whatever. But since they do have the relationship where they can be open, and Anakin does finally open up to him about, why he's so anxious and in the moment about his mom, and then he's just like, oh yeah, the dreams will pass or whatever. I feel like it's there's no straight line to it. But then after he goes and finds out, after everything that happens, he blames Obi-Wan. And then he says, Obi-Wan, this is Obi-Wan's fault. He was the one holding me back. And it was interesting, the fact that they used that dialogue, and that he said, it's Obi-Wan's fault. He's holding me back. And so basically they're saying he's holding him back from being the better Jedi that he believes that he is. But really, when I think about it, I feel like he means Obi-Wan held him back from going to save his mom, because if you look at it that way, because
I can see
Obi-Wan
that.
had an opportunity, she was gone a month, and that was probably a month, prior when he started having those dreams. So, he possibly could have saved her life if he had went sooner. Now, that's also up for debate, because there's also talk that Palpatine, and Dooku were involved in having the Sand People abduct her or whatever. So possibly, no matter what would have happened, that still would have happened. But I feel like in that moment, like if you just watch the movie, it seems weird. It seems weird that after that crazy moment, he is so angry and he says it's all Obi-Wan's fault. So at that moment, like, you're kind of just like, what? How does this have anything to do with Obi-Wan? But then when you kind of take a step back and you think about everything that's going on in his life, the choices, that he's made and are made for him, and what he let Obi-Wan know, and Obi-Wan had knowledge of and did nothing about, or didn't help in any way, if you want to call it that, you can kind of see how Anakin could, in a way, say, I came to my friend, my brother, my dad, and I told him I'm having these like really real nightmares of my mom in danger, and he didn't do anything. He didn't help me. You can kind of see a little bit how he could blame Obi-Wan for that.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. I thought more along the lines of like Obi-Wan, because I almost see Obi-Wan, he's trying to, I think what he's trying to do is he is holding him back, but he's trying to do it in the right way because he knows how powerful Anakin can and will become, and so he's
Mm-hmm.
trying to let him mature before he gains that power,
Yeah.
because he could do exactly what he did, is get that power and let that attachment rule him, which is what happens. And so Obi-Wan's trying to hold it back so that he doesn't necessarily use his power too much because he is so
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point when he talks about Obi-Wan holding him back. I never thought about Obi-Wan holding him back from saving his mom, but he talks about Obi-Wan holding him back and how he's going to be the greatest Jedi, the most powerful Jedi who ever lived, and he'll even be able to stop people from dying.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, he's saying Obi-Wan is holding him back from saving lives, including his mother's. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting way. I've never really thought about that sentence going that way, but
Mm-hmm.
it's you could say in a way he almost blames Obi-Wan for his mother's passing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another point that you had brought up, Tyler, is like the foreshadowing. I think George does awesome in
He's great at
foreshadowing
that.
in like all of his movies, but I feel like in this one there's so much excellent foreshadowing. You know, I feel like you're gonna be the death of me. You know, he's so amazing when it comes to that different stuff. I think another one is also, and we can talk about this if you want to take it first, Tyler, but Padme saying when she said that if they do this, they'd be living a lie. You know,
Yeah,
and so I mean, you could kind of take that one, but it's crazy. Yeah.
well, I really like that point because, well, not only are they living a lie, but she asks him, "Well, could you do that?" And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
"No." And he's like, "You're right. It would destroy us,"
Yeah.
which is exactly. I never really thought about that moment of it would destroy us, but it is, like you said, perfect foreshadowing because he totally is exactly what happens. He says it will destroy us, and that is 100% on point. It destroys them because of his attachment and need to save her. And the irony is that his need and his want and his greed for that is what actually what kills her. What kills her is his
Mm-hmm.
selfish desire to save her over anything.
Mm-hmm.
To choose her over, he's supposed to be the chosen one and a Jedi to bring balance to the light side of the Force, and he chooses one person over the entire galaxy, and that
Yeah.
is the exact opposite of what a Jedi is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I thought kind of just about that whole situation too, that Padme is also like a foreshadow of Leia, which makes sense because obviously it's her mom, but it also, and George does super good at, and I think they touched on it a little bit in kind of the making of bonus discs for this movie, but I think he does so good in portraying Padme as this very strong-willed, do the right thing, above anything else. So in a way, her, like Leia, they are very selfless and they always
Mm-hmm.
want to save someone, right? And so in a way, besides besides her physical attraction to Anakin, which is obvious, the other part of it is I think that Padme, in a way, feels like she can save Anakin.
I
she
could see
feels
that.
like she knows him better than everyone else, and she probably really does in a way. And then obviously later she does, but I feel like she kind of feels like he's right on that edge, and she has empathy for everyone. And so when she sees his situation and knows everything he's been through, she feels like there's enough good in him that she can save him. So I think the foreshadowing of that is, it really hits hard later, but in the moment, you know that like Anakin's lying. You
Mm-hmm.
know that Anakin is only saying what she wants to hear. I truly believe that she believes that, but I don't think that Anakin really believes, So whenever she questions him, he backs down. And so that actually brings out another point too. When she questions and he backs down, I think the other thing is when they're in the field and they're discussing how democracy should work.
Yeah, exactly.
And
The
he
dictatorship.
he basically describes the empire.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
another more foreshadowing.
yeah, so like he basically said that, but then when she questioned him back, he realized what he was saying, and then she
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Oh, are you teasing me? Are you making fun of me?" And then he realizes like, "Oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that." But I do think he probably really did think that. But then he was like, "Oh shoot, yeah, that's like that's
Yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
opposite." And yeah, I just think there's so many things, like people hate on the dialogue so much, but there's so many excellent pieces of dialogue, and especially like when it comes to the foreshadowing, it's like you could look through every 10 minutes and probably find something that foreshadows what happens in the future. And I just love that about this movie too.
You kind of brought out a point I wanted to get to of like the making of.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hold on.
okay, sorry.
Before we get too far, we had a question in chat probably like half an hour ago now that I wanted to
Okay.
bring up just for a bit. It was from Seth, and I feel like it's something we very possibly disagree on based on Josiah's comment, saying he asked the question: do we want to see Mace come back in the modern canon? And Josiah, since you already answered it in chat, why don't you tell us what you think about that?
Yeah. So my big thing about this, and we've seen it over all of the Star Wars movies, the Jedi don't die from fall damage. It doesn't happen. You can use the Force to stop yourself,
Like
whether it's using something to hold on to swing to, whatever it might be. But I mean, even think about Maul. Maul was chopped in half and didn't die from fall damage. Palpatine, was basically like, electrocuted himself and fell down a silo and didn't die. I mean, so Sith and the Jedi just don't die from fall damage.
what I thought about that is it brings me back to that moment you were just talking about them, is in them in the field and he's on those Naboo cows, whatever they are.
Yeah.
I can't remember their names, but and then he gets trampled by it, and he
Uh-huh.
like fakes getting up.
Uh-huh.
And I was just watching, and I'm thinking, I just watched you jump out of a speeder in Coruscant and fall 50 plus stories
Mm-hmm.
and land on a speeder face first. I think
Didn't die.
I think he's okay. He didn't
really
get
get hurt.
trampled by the creature.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
And so, but I think to do the question justice, do y'all want to see Mace come back in the modern canon? Yes, I do want that to happen. And then um
I want
how that could be, I don't think that he died. And then because other people say like, oh man, his arm got cut off. It's like everybody's arms get cut off in this.
this is Star Wars.
So yeah.
What I like, I think I would like to see more of Mace.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the rumors of them wanting to put it in like Boba Fett season 2. I hope they don't do that, or if they do, it's all flashbacks.
Yeah.
Because I I just don't want to see Boba Fett fighting Mace Windu in the current time where the Boba Fett show is, like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. I just don't want to see it after everything that happened in the first season of the Boba Fett show, because I feel like it would mostly be a revenge plot, and frankly, we already had that. That was kind of the whole point of season 1 and his growing from that, and it would kind of take his character progression and just turn it back a whole season and say, oh, he's just back to who he was before the first season. What? I don't think it would work that way. I would like to see like flashbacks, see him angry at him or even trying to kill him. Maybe he tried to find him later in his life when he was younger, but after Revenge of the Sith. But I don't necessarily. I could see him showing up in like past the sequels, maybe. I mean, of course, how old would Mace Windu be after the sequels? How old was he? Was he in his 60s in the prequels? So I don't even know if he would still be alive. He'd have to learn some of that force healing.
I feel like it'd be something along the lines of like a Yoda, he's like close to death, like he's got to be like 80 years old or something, and so if it's more just like similar to like what you're saying, either like flashbacks or something, but where specifically in a show or movie or whatever where they would put him, that's a lot more cloudy and difficult to see how they would put that in there. But I do agree, because he was saying there's been a lot of like leaks and people saying that stuff about it, and it's always over the years kind of been in there. And I think part of it is because Samuel Jackson wants to come back. He wants to be in there so bad. And so I feel like that just the fact alone that he wants to be in it so bad, I feel like somehow it would, and even if he was in like for like a cameo or something like that, I personally would like freak out and love it. Like if Mace somehow was in there again, like I would love to see that.
I'd say he's already done his cameo. He's got his voice in Rise of Skywalker.
True.
See, I absolutely would love to see more of Mace in Star Wars, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I would be okay with him surviving his supposed death in Episode 3, but I really kind of think he shouldn't live, into the original trilogy time, and definitely not into the sequel trilogy time, just because, where's he been? What's he been doing? All this struggles in the sequel trilogies that the Resistance went through, and he's just like, meh, I'm an old hermit. I don't care anymore. And if that's how he is, why would we care what happens to him after that?
Well, that's kind of like they make everybody an old hermit. They made even Luke an old hermit.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's what Star Wars is.
I think what would be a great
the heroes learning from the old hermit.
Yeah,
I would like to see is because Mace Windu was one of, if not the most powerful Jedi at the height of the Republic. Yeah. What I think would be great is to see a kind of a similar something we might see in the Obi-Wan show of Mace Windu batting off Inquisitors, and then here comes Daddy Darth Vader and just destroys him. If you I don't really want to spoil it, but there's some moments in the Brotherhood book where Mace Windu is just not nice to Anakin. And I think there's a line in Episode 3 where Anakin tells Mace Windu that the Chancellor is evil. He's the Sith Lord they're looking for, And Mace goes, well, if that's true, then you've earned my trust.
Yeah.
If you think about it, Anakin is a very successful general. He trained a good student in the Force. He's saved lives. He's done lots of good things. And Mace Windu doesn't trust him at all? Not even a little bit? Like, why does Mace Windu hate Anakin so much? And I feel like that's something that you could see Vader getting revenge on Mace Windu for all the terrible ways he treated Anakin in his life.
I kind of think that that's the moment, and that's why I think it makes it easier, that moment where he turns to Darth Vader, where he cuts off his hand and lets Palpatine finish him off, really, is where if that was anyone else, if that was Obi-Wan standing over him, do you think, it might be a little bit harder to stop it? But this is Mace Windu, who's been really hard on you, and he's about to basically, he's gonna break the Jedi code, and so he can kind of justify himself in that. But then but once he does that, he knows there's no going back. But he could, if it was Obi-Wan standing over him, he would probably think a lot longer, and he probably wouldn't make the same choice, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah,
it goes into the book kind of goes into Anakin and Palpatine's relationship quite a bit, which I think is really interesting to dive into. So here's Mace, who is always been mean to Anakin, about to kill a man who has been an extremely close friend, who's always been supportive and caring and agreed with everything that Anakin's done. Like, if there's gonna be a Mace Windu comeback, I hope it's an awesome lightsaber duel with Darth Vader in his power.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what I would like to see if Mace Windu came back.
To kind of bring the conversation back to the topic of the movie. In the movie, he has a conversation with Palpatine, and where Palpatine's basically telling him, "You don't need guidance, Anakin. In time, you will become the greatest of all the Jedi." He's pumping his tires up.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. He definitely he's pushing Anakin away from the Jedi by telling Anakin how good he is, and Anakin doesn't see it that way.
But
Anakin's
it's feeding an ego.
Yes,
and an ego is what a Jedi shouldn't have.
But like, I will just because being on the other side of it, he really isn't lying though. Palpatine isn't lying. He really is that great. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And Anakin really is that great.
But a Jedi should be humble.
Right. But Palpatine knows that greatness needs to be on his side. That's the difference. The Jedi know he's great, but they're not going to be able. They don't even know that there's a battle right now. They're so blinded by the dark side, they don't even know that they're fighting for Anakin's life, for his soul, for his allegiance. So in a way, you can kind of understand why they're not pushing so hard. But the reality is, there shouldn't have to be the threat of a Jedi going to the dark side to appreciate, what you do have.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's interesting for Palpatine's view of I need this on my side to be successful. Like how powerful Anakin is going to become, and you need that. It's almost like make or break. Like a lot of his manipulation is gone into Anakin.
I think
if there's one thing Palpatine can do, it's manipulate people.
I think
spent a lot of time working on that.
Also, Anakin was the prize Jedi, and Palpatine kind of thought to himself, what would really stick it to the Jedi? If I turned the one that's supposed to, that prophesied to deliver them to paradise or whatever, to get to bring balance, and if I take him and turn him to my side and do the exact opposite of what he's supposed to do, think of how much that would stick it to the Jedi. Like, you thought you were all powerful, you
Mhm.
thought you had the chosen one that was going to bring balance. Look, he's on my side now. I used your biggest pawn, your biggest piece, and turned it into my biggest piece.
Mhm.
I liked. Sorry, were you going to
Go
say
ahead.
something, Q?
No, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say about some comments from Seth there. I liked about how much has Boba Fett really changed if he had the chance to avenge his death with Mace Windu. Yeah, I could see that.
Mhm.
That would be a real test. When you put it like that, I find that pretty interesting. I could get on board with that.
Mhm.
Uh,
One thing I
yeah,
wanted to talk about. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just also going to mention, I'm not sure who he's referring to when he talks about, imagine if you dedicated your life to the construct that created Darth Vader. I think he's talking about
He's talking
Luke
about
there.
Mace Windu. He's talking
Or
about Mace
Mace.
Yeah.
Windu.
Yeah.
Mace
Yeah,
Okay.
like
Windu
become. I
dedicated
think
his
he was
life to
talking like,
the Jedi,
or being
and the
like, I
Jedi
was
created
thinking,
Darth Vader.
right. So I think he was kind of talking because we were talking about becoming like a hermit and where he could be, or during this whole period of time. And yeah, I could totally see that. So
Yeah.
he was, one of the top members of the council. He had direct, I guess, he had the direct opportunity to change that outcome for Anakin. So he could definitely be thinking back of all of the decisions he made and his part in helping
Yeah.
basically Anakin choose the dark side. So yeah, I totally agree that he could be like some old hermit and just being like,
Doesn't want to get
maybe even
involved. It's
doesn't
my
want to get
fault.
involved in anything. Yeah, I don't want to get involved,
I mean, just
with the
depression.
Jedi, yeah, for sure.
The
Yeah, I could
depression
totally see
and
that.
PTSD and guilt that would drive you
Mm-hmm.
into that, because you could feel like, well, this is all my fault, or at least I
Mm-hmm.
had a heavy hand in this. I was
Yeah.
one of, if not the most powerful, if not the second most powerful Jedi to Yoda, and I could have done more. And just the guilt. Yeah, I like that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I think.
Mace
Oh, go for
Windu
it.
has. I think Mace Windu has the opportunity to be a very interesting character that we could. There's definitely more to learn about. Um, he's very much walks the line of like his fighting style. He's very aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and he walks the line of what Jedi should and shouldn't do. Like he's not a nice guy, really,
Yeah.
and it's his opportunity to be, but he is very dedicated to the way of the Jedi, which is really interesting. And one thing
Mm-hmm.
I had noticed while watching the movie, when he walks up to Count Dooku in the arena right before the Jedi fight, right? Well, I noticed, I'm like, what? Mace or Count Dooku is quite a bit older than Mace Windu, right? But Mace Windu is one of the most powerful, like Tyler said, probably second most powerful to Yoda. But I do believe that he's technically in charge of the council. Mace Windu is technically the one in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
I would
he
probably
has,
agree with that.
he might not be the most powerful in the Force, but as far as the ranking of Jedi, he is number one.
Yeah.
And yet Count Dooku is older than him, right? And he was Yoda's apprentice. So Count Dooku probably saw a lot of Mace Windu's growing up years, right?
Yeah.
Becoming the Jedi that he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls him his old friend,
Yes.
which, so obviously they were quite familiar with each other, and he understands the power that Mace Windu has in the position that he's in. And I feel like there's a lot of story there. I really enjoyed the Dooku audio story. And I feel like
Dooku
Yeah.
there's
Jedi
a
Lost.
lot. Yeah. Yep, the audio drama. I do
Mhm.
think there's a lot of cool story that could be told between Mace Windu and Dooku in their younger years.
I totally agree with that. I know this kind of brings us to like another point um, when it comes to Dooku. If is Dooku really bad? if if you think about Obi-Wan, his master Qui-Gon Jinn, Qui-Gon Jinn, if he didn't die, if Maul didn't kill him, where would he be 10 years later? During that same moment with Anakin, because he would still be training Anakin at that point. Where would Anakin be? Where would Qui
Yeah.
Gon Jinn be? What would their choices be? It is definitely
He
interesting. And so when he even said that, when Dooku brings that up, when Dooku reminds Obi-Wan that Qui-Gon was his apprentice, just like he is apprentice to him, and then he was like, he would never, trust you, or he'd never, team up with you or whatever. He says, he reminds him of that. And so you can see in the first movie, and then even through that time, the reverence Obi-Wan has for Qui-Gon. And so, like, if you take that same reverence that Qui-Gon has for Dooku, which, once again, if you haven't read that, if you haven't or read or heard that audio drama of Dooku, oh man, it is so good. And that plays a huge part into this, because then when you see him, you put an excellent correlation between the two. Is Dooku basically the Qui-Gon of the Sith?
yeah. I I really like that point because I was kind of thinking about it and the way he words it, and he basically tells Obi-Wan the whole truth. And it almost makes you think, is he kind of like a Qui-Gon version of the Sith where or even not, maybe he's just a good guy. Maybe Dooku knows what's right and he's trying to beat them from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of thought about that, but I was like, well, if he was trying to do that, he could have just tried to kill Palpatine. But he's not that dumb. He knows he's not. He's
Yeah,
not.
he's not strong enough.
He's not strong enough. So maybe he's got his own plans of trying to like hint Obi-Wan over there. Hey, maybe the Jedi can assist with this.
Yeah, I think, or another thing to think about is, what if Dooku was testing out to see what people would believe? So he took his own journey to leave, maybe similar to what Qui-Gon Jinn would have done after 10 years. He could have possibly made a similar decision to leave the Order, right? But then he meets Palpatine, and that kind of changes things. And so maybe Dooku at that time, he's not thinking Jedi Sith, he's thinking power.
Mm-hmm.
And Palpatine's offering him power, offering him more wisdom, new abilities that he never thought that he could have. So,
Or
in a way, there's nothing necessarily wrong because he left the Order. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with him learning all of these other skills. If he's going to still, in the end, use it for good.
it,
So,
it kind of
there's,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, they just kind of made me think that he left the Jedi and went to become the Count of Sereno, so
Mm-hmm.
that because he thought he could do more for that planet. Well,
Yeah.
maybe he's kind of on the lines where Anakin is thinking, I've brought peace and security to my new empire. Maybe he's thinking that the Empire and the Sith are really the best option to actually bring security to the universe. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and obviously going about it the wrong way, like most villains do, but
Mm-hmm.
still has good intentions.
Yeah. And so
Well, and
maybe Dooku knows he can't go into the council, right? And say, hey, Palpatine is the Dark Lord of the Sith. He's tricked you all. They'd be like, arrest him probably. So maybe what he was possibly doing is he's like, since I have a connection with Obi-Wan, I have a connection with Qui-Gon, here, let's at least attempt it. Let's see what they think. And then at that moment, he's like, okay, yeah, if I can't even one-on-one telling him 100% the truth to Obi-Wan, who has reverence, for my old Padawan, if I can't even get through to him, then there's no reason to attempt trying to talk to the council about it.
I know. I was talking to Kalani, and I was explaining their relationship, and I said basically Obi-Wan would, from a Jedi perspective, Obi-Wan would be Dooku's grandson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way you bring it up at the start of this movie, Attack of the Clones, the start of the movie, Padme tries to blame Count Dooku for the assassination attempt on her life.
True.
And Ki-Adi-Mundi says he's an idealist, not a murderer.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, when he left the Jedi, it's almost like he left in the most "it's okay to leave" way. You know, like,
well, there's a
they didn't
statue of him
pursue
too.
him. They didn't pursue him. They didn't try to
Yoda
take
lets
him
him keep
out,
his
arrest him.
lightsaber.
Yeah, he's not even exiled.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting way to see it. That he possibly could have talked to them on that front, but then all the bad stuff that starts to happen at the end of Attack of the Clones, and he's pretty much lost his opportunity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that goes back once again, kind of thinking where Qui-Gon would be, because in it makes sense more, Qui-Gon's philosophy and viewpoint, that he definitely could care less what's going on in the Senate, and I feel like Dooku's the same way. He doesn't care so much about that. And since the Jedi and the Council, are getting closer and closer bonded to it, I feel like that's another reason why he could see that, the Jedi are basically just doing whatever the Senate wants versus what's right, and they're basically, they obviously, Dooku knew that they're headed to war. Dooku knew before all the Jedi that war was coming. So he could already see that.
You could say the same about Qui-Gon. That was this whole point of finding Anakin. He could see where the galaxy was heading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I wanted to just bring out one other point. I wanted to kind of do behind the scenes stuff. One thing in the making of, because one thing that I thought it's always been cool about Star Wars is technology, and not just technology in the movies, but the way they advance movie technology. And so I think I'm not 100% on this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but probably at this point, Attack of the Clones was the most CGI'd movie ever. And I'm not sure if that's correct, but I do know that Revenge of the Sith was for sure when it was made.
Yeah, I think it was.
But one of the things I thought that was really cool is they would make up these virtual, basically like a video game. It looked awful, but you could see how the scenes were supposed to go. And so then they would show that to George, and he could make adjustments to how he wanted it to be filmed.
Mm-hmm.
And then they could make those. And then when he said everything was good, then they did all the CGI. So they didn't have to continually like, oh, you wanted this foot there and you wanted this slightly a little changed. They didn't have to do the full CGI until he was like, okay, this is good. Now fully draw it in. And another thing I thought was cool is they basically did that same thing, and they were showing with the speeder chase at the beginning in Coruscant.
Yeah.
But they could show Obi-Wan and Anakin basically how it's supposed to look, so they could know how to act.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just kind of cool because if you think about it, it was like the beginning of that kind of thing, which now when they shoot The Mandalorian, you have the volume, which instead of a green screen, you can see all of you can see all of what's behind you and everything, and so the actors can really get into their environments. But in Attack of the Clones, this was 20 years ago now, and in fact, actually, the 20th anniversary is in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's super cool what they were doing to push technology in this movie.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
it's the first time we saw CGI Yoda.
Mm-hmm. Which I like a lot better,
Yeah.
personally.
I think they both have their place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will agree with that. I
But yeah,
had
I think, yeah, touching on like the behind the scenes thing, I think another thing is, if anybody watching this, if you haven't seen the behind the scenes, you got to do it. I think you can even find a lot of the behind the scenes, even like on YouTube. But I think, especially for people who maybe have been tainted by other people's opinions of the movie, maybe people making fun of the dialogue or the acting or whatever. We were talking about this before. When you watch like the behind the scenes and how much work that they put into it, it's mind boggling, how their attention to detail of all the different sets, all the different props. And it's so cool too. When you watch that, you see how big of a part and that George Lucas' hand was on every single piece of that movie.
mm-hmm.
He like looked through every single piece of wardrobe, every alien face,
Yep.
every ship, every inch of that. He looked through everything, made his changes. He, changed up people's sketches. Every single thing of those movies, he was so involved in. And I think, without being like, starting to go on the negative side of things, but I think that's why this trilogy is so amazing compared to the sequel trilogy, to me personally, because the Star Wars that I originally fell in love with was George Lucas 100% vision down to the square inch of the movie. The music, every note, every single thing of the movies was George Lucas' idea, his imagination, and everybody around him. And you can see this when you look at the behind the scenes, everybody, the actors, the people in design, in the CGI departments, every single person looked to him like in reverence. And it was just amazing to see. I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
I was in the room, I would look at him the same way too. But it was crazy to see all these people top of their fields, like you were saying, like top of the line CGI. He wanted stuff that didn't even exist at the time. They were trying to like fulfill his imagination that didn't even exist in cinema at the time, and they were doing it because they believed in him and they loved his vision. And I feel like that also is part of the reason why it was there was so much CGI in it. But when I was in that theater, I was in that movie. I was in those moments. And so I think they were able to nail like George Lucas vision technologically at that moment, everything that was possible. They put like their heart and soul into that movie. And so despite, if you don't like every single line of the movie, or you think some of the lines like, are a little cringy or whatever, that movie was such like a beautiful work of art. I loved it.
One thing I like to point out is the design of the movie, because when they were designing ships and stuff, basically George told them, "No, this is a simpler time. This is before war, and so you wanted stuff and more elegant. The ships from Naboo are clean, and they're the whole universe at this point, before it really starts to get into the war, is supposed to be more about culture and the arts, and you see that in their designs, their ships. Their ships are more like art instead of
Sorry, how great is that opening scene, right? Above Coruscant with that the Naboo Starliner, that just
Mm-hmm.
beautiful design, and the two N1 starfighters. Yeah, that ship
Yeah.
is. Look how cool that is. How sleek and
Mm-hmm.
Naboo ship designers are fantastic. Nubian ships are just
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. I've
Yeah.
always loved the N1 starfighter. Like that is
like even
it's
it's
like the
a
most
defensive ship,
elegant, but it's so elegant.
but it's a fighter.
But the way, yeah, but it's a fighter. And I also think that about that when you talked about the simpler time, we're not at war. Well, look at the Jedi starfighters from this
Mm-hmm.
time. They're
Hmm.
they're not really very, very they're not armed very well. They don't even have their own hyperdrives. They have
Yep.
to use the rings to get places.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very simple. They aren't expecting any kind of major attack on them. And then, like you said, the design you had to look at it. You had to go, okay, um, here's what the Empire had for ships, right? What did the previous three generations look like? And you get the acclimator class, which is I think a beautiful uh, star destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not very powerful. It's smaller. It's not nearly as armed as a star destroyer, but you had to think they weren't at a full scale war, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, Mando's N1. That's so cool.
I've
I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
pre-ordered my my Lego.
Did
it's
you?
not the
Yeah.
it's not the best bounty hunter ship, I don't think, but I think it's absolutely perfect for the two of them. And I knew when I saw that little bubble on top of it, where the
Yeah.
droid used to be, that had to be
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Grogu's little seat. That was
I love it.
that
Love
There's
it.
was so
one
wizard.
one other thing I kind of wanted to get in here. I wanted to show and we can talk about for a second. Let's talk
Oh,
about Dex.
Dex. Yeah. Love Dex's character.
Dex is the greatest character. He reminds me a lot of my own uncle. He's just like friendly. You can go and talk to him, and he's always got something funny to say.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Dex is great, and I really want to see like something from him in the Obi-Wan show. That even if like he knows that Obi-Wan's still alive or something.
Yeah.
I could see that because of the way that the book goes into this relationship right here a little bit, and it's so cool. There's
Mm-hmm.
some I don't want to spoil it because there's some really cool points. I keep saying I don't want to spoil it
Plus
when I
the
talk
books,
about the book, but
but the books also has only been out for what 3 days.
Yeah.
yeah, 3 days now.
No,
And
yeah,
yeah,
I,
I
I think
guess
it is
I guess
awesome.
there's some. So you haven't read any of it yet, right, Josiah?
No, just that one portion
Okay,
that I'd
yeah.
sent you guys.
There's honestly, I don't even remember what that portion said, but it's been great, and this relationship right here is cool.
Yeah. I love him as a character, and I feel like, he
And it's 50
definitely,
to Steiner.
yeah, he definitely could be like an awesome, cameo in another story, or in a show or something like that. Like, once again, like, just because, like you said, like, he's just awesome. As soon as, like, you can tell, even Obi-Wan, as soon as he walks in and sees him, he relaxes and he just feels good to be in his presence. And it's kind of funny because one of the deleted scenes, Obi-Wan actually first takes that to, like, the Jedi, you know, research scientific facility or whatever, and droids check it out. And so it makes sense later. But they look at it and they're like, yeah, it's not known anywhere. Someone must have just made it themselves or whatever. And then he's like, oh, I know who can help me out with this. And like, it's kind of funny, like it was like a little bit cheesy or whatever, but then when you think of Dex, he was probably like, yes, I get to go hang out with my buddy and get a cup of Jawa or whatever,
Get the Jawa juice.
Jawa juice, yes. So I mean, then it makes sense why he's like, oh, I know where I can go take this to my good buddy over at the diner. And so yeah, I feel like he knows just on on a peer relationship basis that this is just a straight up good dude. And then I think the knowing more of his backstory of Dex anyways would be so awesome, because it's like, how does this random 50s diner in Coruscant, this 50s diner owner in the middle of Coruscant or whatever, he's like all ghetto and dressed and everything, like probably doesn't make a lot of money, but it's like, then how does he know all this information? Like, I love that. And I love that, like, you don't know that how he knows all this info,
but I do know now.
Yeah, not everybody knows. Let's say
I know,
if you watch the movie, you don't know.
I will say this: his background is.
That's right. He's the best hugger.
He was.
That's true.
He was one of the top information brokers in the underworld for a long time, and he knows things about Obi-Wan. He knows a lot of things about Obi-Wan's past that he kind of talks about and reveals, and it's great. I would absolutely not. I mean, he's information broker, right? So he probably knows Obi-Wan's alive. I would absolutely love to see that cameo in the Obi-Wan show somewhere.
Or if there's like some sort of connection, like, so there's already been, people saying like, oh, maybe there's another, either Jedi or Padawan that's like hiding, and that's what maybe possibly brings out Obi-Wan or whatever. So what if like Dex ends up being the connection? Someone goes, and then he's like, there is somebody that can help you. Just like, oh man, that'd be awesome.
That would be cool. That would be cool to see him for sure.
Anything else? Oh, one thing I really liked, and it was back about the concept art and when they were drawing it all up, and they were talking about the theme of the movie. And the theme of the movie is love and war. And so you see that, and they were talking. You see that by the colors of the movie. When the movie starts, it's a blue of Coruscant. You land in the morning. And then when the movie ends, it's red. You're on the red planet, the red desert planet of Geonosis. And you can see the red. And then you're also the ending, the final scene on Coruscant, kind of the one that's behind Q's head, is the red sunset. And then they were talking. Then you have Tatooine, and it's more of a neutral yellow, and it kind of splits the movie in half, where you go from the love, the blue, the calm, to red, the anger, the hate, the war. And it's so cool how just it's something I never even thought about, but just the details that George thinks about when you go into these movies, of just the color of the atmosphere and the themes. And so that was one of the cool things that I really, really enjoyed about the theme there. You can really see the love and the war and what it does.
Yeah, I love that. And since you brought it up, it reminded me also that they touched on during the duel with Anakin and Dooku, as short as it was, there is a moment, when the lights, went dim and it was dark, and then it shows Anakin's face, and the lightsaber lights are flashing back and forth of blue and red.
Yep.
And once again, that was another foreshadow. And like, I didn't necessarily notice that, until way later. That's like, yeah, that is so perfect that at that moment he's already, starting to teeter on which side he's going to end up going. And so, yeah, it's like you said, it's just the attention to detail and the tiniest minute things. If you watch it one time and never think about it, you're missing out on so much of what George gives us.
Yes, very, very true. I think I saw the dudes in the biker gang, or the from Boba Fett. Yeah, it does fit. It also, it would fit. See, I've always thought that those bikes would fit very nicely parked at Dex's Diner.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think we've talked a lot. I think we kind of summed it all up. Anything else you guys want to add? Where can we find you guys?
Well, I just wanted to say one last thing. I feel like watching the movie again in preparation for this podcast to talk about it, I saw a lot of things in a whole new light that definitely, I think, made the movie a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to pay attention to every little detail, to have stuff to talk about, just how important everything is, and how it actually is a really good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst prequel. I think it's still a great movie.
Yeah. I mean, I still would rank The Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith above it, but I definitely think it's risen in my view of it, and just after this last time watching it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I think if you could just kind of take a moment, don't think of the other movies and be in the movie, which is like my favorite thing to do. When I watch any movie, I go with the intention to enjoy it first. But then my second is trying to be completely into the movie, like the director and the actors are, that which is their goal. And I think that I was the same the last time that I watched it in preparation for this as well. I just put myself in there and I was like, man, it's just as a standalone, it's such an awesome movie. There's so much in there. There's action, there's humor, and it's a beautiful love story because it ends with them getting married, and in a beautiful wedding ceremony, in Naboo. So it's like, if you just take it as it is, there's so much, greatness in this one movie. I think sometimes it's really hard because, you think of all what happens next. It's kind of hard to be in that moment and realize, it really was a forbidden love, love story that, to the end of this movie had a happy ending.
I like that point a lot there, Seth. Movies are art, and yeah, our view of art definitely changes. The more, especially when you can take time and analyze it more, and the realization, and like, look at this film. Okay, this photo is amazing because you see the wedding, which is love, but look to the right. It's a red sunset. Like, the symbolism is amazing.
I'm just laughing at what Seth said. That was funny.
Yeah, my bad. I was trying to find the right photo.
Tyler puts the picture of Dex up again.
Oh man.
Well, that reminds me of this picture here reminds me of I was watching the movie, and she talks about swimming to the island every day, and all I could think of was, I hope that water is not connected to the ocean, because we just saw what was in that in the last movie.
Yep, that's true. And I was also thinking, I was like, that island is way too far away to swim to. Nice try.
Right?
Maybe the Gungans can swim that far, but not a human.
All right. Well, I think we should start wrapping things up, guys.
Yeah.
Well, You guys just want to list off what you're up to and where people can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, on Twitter, I'm Martinez mostly. Find me mostly Martinez pretty much everywhere. Twitter's mostly where I am. I'm also I mess around a little bit on uh, Discord channels and stuff, so you can find me usually in anywhere that has something about Star Wars. I'm usually around there saying funny things. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much where you're gonna find me if you want to look for me is on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter at Crazy Quinton. I'm not very active on there, but I'm trying to be a bit better about that. And I have started to do a little bit of Twitch streaming. You can find me at Crazy Quinton. I'm not very regular at streaming, but it's something new. I'm trying to fit it around other schedules, so you can feel free to stop by and check it out.
And as you can see, I'm at Mostly Darth on Twitter, but you'll also notice that I'm missing my Canuck because I usually go by Darth Canuck, and that's what you can find me on my Twitch. Don't stream very often, but go ahead, give me a follow. Might be streaming some Lego Star Wars. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd like to also just give a shout out to everybody who watched us live, who jumped in. Obviously, Seth, you're definitely always in the conversation. I appreciate you being here. That's huge.
Please appreciate you.
Yep, Danny. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm gonna say your name, and don't hate me if I say this wrong because I've known you a long time and I've talked to you a bunch, on Twitter and Discord. But Togo Bap. I don't know if that's how you say it, but I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you checking out our podcast on your way to work. That's the whole goal of this thing is anybody who loves Star Wars to have a conversation, to maybe give you some differing, opinions that you've never had, some different ideas you never had. And obviously, definitely leave comments anywhere. If you have any ideas or differing ideas, we love to hear those too, because anything that's going to help us see it differently, love Star Wars more, that's what we're here for.
And also check out our first video. Leave a comment there if you haven't already, because when we reach 100 subs, we're going to be giving away a Star Wars video game of your choice.
Yep.
All right, guys. I think we've done it. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.